Hi guys, I'm Forrester here with a confession to make. Well, actually, 3 confessions to make, and I'll get into that later, but first I want to give you some of the backstory, what this is all about. And the story starts back in 2008 with the Great Recession. If you think back to how you thought back in 2008, 2009, I'll just tell you what I thought. The government was throwing everything they could at solving the recession. It was a very serious recession, hence the name Great Recession. And it was caused by the housing bubble burst. Now, that's when I became what I call a prepper. My wife maybe calls it homesteading. I call it prepping. I think prepping puts more emphasis on self-defense. And I remember telling my wife she was getting into things like water purification, so that we would always have drinking water, canning beans, dry beans. I'd never heard of that, or canning hamburger, canning meat. I was sure at that time that we were going to eventually die from food poisoning, but it hasn't happened yet. We're both still kicking. But she was into that form of homesteading, but I remember telling her, we could be as prepared as can be, but unless we have self-defense, we're just preparing for other people, in a really worst case scenario. And so I didn't have a handgun. I had hunting rifles, shotguns, but I didn't have a handgun. And so that's when I bought my very first gun, and we'll go over to the tabletop in a second, and I'll demonstrate some of this stuff for you. But that's when I bought my first gun, and then it started multiplying. I started getting into handguns, getting into knives, flashlights, all the things that you need for self-defense. And I started thinking about niches. Niches for this, niches for that. My first handgun I'll show you in just a second, and it was something basically that my wife and I could both use, but then I immediately started thinking about concealed carry. It happened to be winter, so it was winter concealed carry. Well, there was another niche come the summer for summer concealed carry when you're not wearing an overcoat. And it just went on and on. A go-to-war gun, a home defense gun, a truck gun. And I came up with 17 different niches. Can you believe that? I'm not going to show you all of those. I don't have time to do that. But I was really into it and wanted to have the perfect gun for each niche. Same thing with knives. And knives weren't quite as expensive as guns. It wasn't as big a commitment, but I ended up with a whole collection of knives. And I've enjoyed both. I'm not complaining about it. But I'll go to the tabletop and show you where I started, and then I'll show you where I am now, and we'll get into the confessions, okay? I'll join you over at the tabletop. Okay, for the show and tell, let's start with my very first handgun. And my very first gun was this Smith & Wesson revolver. And my main focus was to get a revolver or get a handgun that we could use for home defense and both my wife and I could use. And so after watching a lot of videos, and speaking of videos, back in the heyday, I watched Nut and Fancy, Hickok 45, and a ton of other gun and self-defense prepping channels. I haven't watched a Nut and Fancy video in ages. I probably haven't watched him in 2 or 3 years. I don't even know if he still makes videos, but I do remember he was very popular in the day and even was a guest on a talk show on TV. Okay, so once I bought this, I had home defense covered, but then I started thinking about niches. So I started out in the winter, so I got a winter concealed carry gun. I got a summer concealed carry gun when I was not wearing an overcoat, and the niches just went on and on and on. I will show you, I'm not going to show you all those, but I will show you the last handgun that I purchased, and this was sometime, I think, around the start of COVID, but this is my Beretta 92G Elite. It's souped up. I love this gun, but I've never carried it. So those were the 2 handguns that I started with. Okay, so other things that I got into, one was self-defense flashlights. So this is a 4/7 flashlight. Note the serrated bezel there. And so that was something that I got into. And I have a ton of flashlights. Knives were something that started early on. So I followed a lot of Nut and Fancy's advice, and if you know, he was big into Almar. This Almar Eagle was his self-defense knife because it's so lightweight. So it's capable, but it's very lightweight, and he was big on lightweight equipment. But I fell in love with Emerson. Now, a lot of people don't like Emerson, so this was my heavy-duty self-defense knife. So I didn't carry this a whole lot, but back in the day I did. And so I'll put that there for you to look at. I even got into some unique equipment. So I'm big into pens, especially now, but I got this Smith & Wesson pen. So it's a self-defense pen with an attitude adjuster, as I called it. Carried that religiously. And then another piece of unique gear that I got was this right here. And it's another attitude adjuster, but it snaps on your belt and you fill it full of quarters. And so it's like a slapjack, but if anybody asks you about it, it's a change purse. And I never had any problem with that getting through the metal detector at an airport or explaining it. I just said it was my change purse. Okay, it's confession time, and confession number one is that I overdid it. That might be very obvious to a lot of you that are watching this video because you may not be a prepper at all. I have a lot of fountain pen or watch people out there that watch my channel also, but I overdid it, and I realized that. So some of it was a compulsion just to collect. I think I tend to be a collector naturally. But when I started filling the niches for the handguns and for the knives, you know, I just kept thinking of another niche and a perfect gun to fill that niche. The last handgun that I showed you, the Beretta, that was the last niche that I could justify in my mind that I needed a gun to fill that niche. It would have been so much better if I had just done more research and bought the perfect concealed carry handgun and the perfect home defense handgun and let it go at that and just practice a little bit more with those. Same thing with the knives. I could have come up with 3 to 5 knives that filled the basic niches and let it go at that. It wouldn't have been as much fun, but I will say that I did not spend money out of my salary. I've mentioned this throughout my channel. I didn't spend any money out of my salary on any of the prepping gear. I only used my MAD money, which was YouTube money and money from a previous pension that I received from a previous employer, I meant. But so anyway, I really enjoyed it, but I admit that I overdid it, and now I'm dealing with the situation at 70 of what do I do with all this gear that I have that probably nobody in the family really cares one thing about except me. So let me go on to confession number 2, and then we'll go back to the tabletop. Confession number 2 is that I carried it in places I should not legally have been carrying it. So, you know, that is maybe easy to understand, but the reasoning was if you have the perfect gear for every situation, nobody knows that you have it on you. So if I have a concealed carry weapon in my pocket that is not visible, you know, nobody knows it. So if I go somewhere where legally I'm not supposed to carry it, you know, I'm okay, unless I have to go through a metal detector. But I would carry my gear pretty much everywhere I went. I'd say maybe 90% of where I went, I had it on me. I even carried it. I believe I needed to carry it when I was at home. And so I did. I would keep a handgun in my pocket if I was in the yard or working around in the house or around the house. My thinking was it would be a shame to be attacked or have a break-in and I wasn't prepared. When I had the gear, I just didn't have it within reach, didn't have it on me. So that was sort of my thinking. The only place now, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll get to that later. I do carry one or two places for sure now, but it's, I think, a fairly dangerous situation. I'll get to that later. So 2 confessions. 1 is I overdid it in purchasing all this gear, and 2 is I used to carry it where I really legally should not have been carrying it. Let's go back to the tabletop and I'll describe the situation right now. So I'll go over the gear that I use now, starting with the handgun. So this is the Ruger. Both of these are Rugers. This is the Ruger LCP. This was one of the first, maybe the second or third handgun that I purchased. I purchased it for winter concealed carry. It does have live ammo in it, so I'm not going to play with it too much. And this is the Ruger LCR. Now I got this somewhere maybe midway along the journey of buying handguns, and this has live ammo in it also, so I'm not going to play with it. I'll put it back down. So these two Rugers are the guns that I use the most in my collection. The others basically stay in storage. Occasionally I'll swap one out for this one, but these are the two. Usually there's only two handguns that I have out. If I'm carrying this one, and I don't carry either of these where I'm not supposed to anymore, that's one thing I do not do. But if I'm using this one, it's generally in my pocket or it's in my fanny pack. This one stays on my bedside table if I'm in the house. So the other gear, as far as flashlights, this is a O-light, a small O-light that I carry. I have 2 or 3 of these, and they don't put out a whole lot of light, but they put out all I need for most cases. I don't carry a tactical light anymore. As far as knives, this is the knife that gets the most use, this little Victorinox. I've had that for ages, and you can tell based on the color and the wearing of it. And right now, I'm carrying this one a lot, so this is my Benchmade. And I love this knife. This was one of the first ones I bought. I bought it used from a coworker, and he really got me into knives. So I'm carrying that one right now. And then instead of that Smith & Wesson pen, I'm carrying, this is the current pen that I'm carrying. This is a Chinese-made pen. It's called Moonman. I think it's Moonman M100 if I remember right. And I love fountain pens, so that's the one I'm carrying right now. So let me go on to confession number 3. Okay, it's time for confession number 3. And number 3 is that I've become very lax in the use of this prepping gear that I just showed you this morning. So I was huge into prepping, but somewhere along the way things slowed down and I don't use it nearly as much. I'm not as dedicated to it. And I'll give you some examples. So if you meet me on the street, you're not going to see that Smith & Wesson pen. You're probably going to see something like this Moonman M100 fountain pen. You're going to see a fountain pen in my pocket. You're not going to see a flashlight, a tactical flashlight. I probably won't have a flashlight on me at all, and if it is, it's going to be like that small O-light. Tactical knives. I do not carry tactical knives anymore, so they just are too obvious, too unnecessary, and too impractical. And so I'll carry a small case pocket knife or something like that. A very conservative knife, something that's more practical. When it comes to pens, for instance, oh, and by the way, while I'm thinking about it, you won't see that tactical change purse either on me. I haven't carried that in ages, although I think it's a very unique product. When it comes to guns, chances are I will not have a gun on me. I might have one left in the vehicle if I'm driving somewhere. And there will be some situations where I will carry, and I'll carry more capacity than this Ruger LCR, which is a 5-shot revolver. But that's when, for instance, when I'm working in the woods, there's my wife's property in South Carolina. It's about an hour away, but it is not a safe situation due to some people that live nearby. And so I never go there, and I encourage others not to go there at all, but I never go there to work in the woods without having some type of handgun with me. So anyway, the situation has changed dramatically from 10 years ago for me. I feel like there's less risk. I don't know, maybe there's more risk. I'd be interested in your input. I think it changed with COVID of somewhere around 2020, changed with COVID because we all got locked down and we weren't out about and mingling. So we were all at home and maybe felt a little bit safer. So COVID was one big factor. Another factor for me personally was when my daughter and her family moved back. So we see them more often. They do live over an hour away, but we see them more often, and I do not want to take a chance of leaving a gun with live ammo in it lying around. So I'm careful to put things up and out of the way so that if I'm out of the house and they pay a surprise visit, some bad situation might not happen. So I'm very careful in that regard. So that's my thoughts and my 3 confessions. So I overdid it when I was purchasing this gear. I carried it and used it when in places where I shouldn't have. And now I'm gone the other direction. I'm much more lax and maybe should carry it more often than I do. Give me your thoughts. I've covered the whole gambit of situations. Give me your thoughts from your perspective on prepping. Y'all take care.